Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
There was a glitch there. Happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. As I'm going through the holiday season this year, I guess the holiday classic that I'm thinking about the most is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I know a lot of people out there are struggling to get through this holiday season on how we are going to celebrate each other. And I will tell you how we're going to celebrate each other the way we have for the past 284 days. And that's from a distance. Tonight, we will celebrate the one and only James Morgan. He is the producing artistic director of the York Theater, which happens to be one of my favorite theaters in New York. And I hope that you'll stick with us throughout the show because I may have a special little prize to give away at the end of the evening. And then afterwards, take a little short break and then go to the York Theater, virtually, of course, because tonight is also their gala celebration. And we will be talking about that as well. This show, as you all know, is about celebrating artists and their body of worth. And artists come on both sides of the footlights. And this man has been the driving force of the York Theater for, I think, around 46 years. Am I right?
You are right. Almost to the day.
Almost to the day. When did you start? What was the actual date that you started at the York Theater?
It was in November of 1974. I had graduated from college, University of Florida in May, and I went home. I'm from Florida. I went home for a couple of months, and I decided to move to New York. And I was up here for a couple of months. My grandmother lived up here. Our aunt and uncle lived up here. And so I was not lost. I'd been up here a number of times, so I was relatively comfortable, but still finding your way is difficult. And there was a point where I said to my aunt and uncle, or really I was having a conversation with my Aunt Mary. They lived at 1130 Park. And I said, do you know anyone in theater who could help me? And she said, well, no, we really don't. We just don't run in those circles. But there is this dear little theater group at the church. Maybe you'd like to meet the woman who runs it. And it was York, 5 years old. And the woman was Janet Hayes Walker, who founded it. And I guess the rest is sort of history. It worked out very well.
Well, I want to back up a little bit. I'm going to back up a lot, as a matter of fact, and I want to go down the path that got you here in the first place. First of all, I want to ask you, as I do with all of our shows, because this is what we're going through. As I said in my introduction, it's been 284 days. That's the gauge for me because that's when all the theater shut down. And I want to ask how you're doing really in the midst of this crazy world we find ourselves in.
Me personally or the theater?
You personally.
I am so lucky. I am so very lucky. There are people, for a number of reasons, I've ended up being in far better shape than a lot of people, and I'm grateful. I can't tell you how grateful I am. So anytime I begin to have a feeling of, oh, I can't believe I'm having to do this or live with this or not do this or whatever, I realize I should just shut up and stop whining, because all sorts of people have it worse off than I do. I am extremely lucky. And so I've made the best of it. That's all hopefully we can do. I mean, some good things have come out of this, actually. I've been in this apartment for now almost 3 years, and the first 2 years, it was really very unfinished, and all of this happened 2 years into my stay here, and suddenly I was here full time, where I hadn't been for most of the time I'd lived in the apartment. And so a lot of things got finished. I got a dining table. I was eating off a card table after 2 years still, and I got an actual dining table. I got a desk, and a couple of other pieces of furniture. And and then I've done a lot of cooking, which is something that I'd always knew I would enjoy, but never sort of gave myself or took the time to do it. Gave myself the time or took the time to do it. And I've enjoyed that a lot. I'm much more comfortable in the kitchen than I was 8 months ago. And so that's a good thing. And
not to dig too deep into your personal life, but do you live alone, or are you living with someone?
I do live alone. There's someone in my life. But he's anyway.
Well, I asked because I wonder if you enjoy cooking for yourself. That's where I was.
No, it's much. One of the great things is that out of this, I have often had an assistant to do sort of to pay bills and stuff that I just don't deal well with, and a wonderful, just out of the blue. This guy named Joseph Hayward, who is a director, a young director, and he had assisted Bill Castellino on several shows that we'd done, Desperate Measures, and I'm blanking right now on the others. But anyway, he's wonderful, and he was out of work, and he had some work, but not enough to keep him in food, I guess, or whatever. And so but he wasn't looking to be paid. He just wanted to do something. He was sitting around too much. And he said, "Is there anyone at the York I could help? I just like the York so much." And I said, "Well, you can help me, but I'm not asking you to do it for nothing. I will pay you." And he was a godsend for the first 6 months of this. And he helped me do a lot. He's great at ordering stuff online that I'm not. He said, "Oh, what kind of dining room table do you want?" And I got specific about the size and the color. And so we had these projects. Today we're getting a dining room table. And then I had to find one that I could actually afford. But he was wonderful. And so anyway, having an assistant around at the end of the day when I had been cooking made it much more interesting to cook regularly for someone. And he happened to like most of what I fixed. And so there was something there. He has since moved, he's English, and he has since moved back to England just because he didn't see any likelihood of anything happening in theater here anytime soon. He said, "I don't know why I'm here. I'd rather go home and be with my family." His brother was having a baby, and so he moved back, and I have a wonderful new assistant, Fiona Sweeney, who's just graduated from Wagner. And so she has taken over where Joseph was. Anyway, that's sort of.
Now, do you are you a very social person, or are you pretty much a private?
I think I'm very social. Yeah.
So I miss entertaining on that table, hopefully sooner rather than later.
What?
I said you'll be entertaining at that table.
Oh yes, yeah.
Rather than later.
Yeah, I've actually had 2 people over. Well, actually, yesterday, in preparation for the gala that we're having tonight, I met our new development director for the first time, Alana Graber. We'd met online, and Fiona was here, who's also on the staff at the York now. And so they met for the first time. All of us had met online at our staff meetings, and it was so interesting to actually be in the same room with someone that we felt like we knew, but had actually never met in person. So just in this room yesterday, there were three, count them, three people. And it was, and of course, you would expect to be hugging and all of that, and there was none of that. We were all wearing masks and being very, very careful, which one has to be.
Yes.
And so that, so I don't know if I'm paying assistants to eat my food.
Well, I want to ask you, I mean, one of the things that I've said that all of us that are in this business have gotten very good at over the past 10 months now are the technical aspects of it, you know, cameras and mics and all of that we have to deal with now. Have you really embraced all of that, or are you still resisting it?
I'm not resisting it. No, I think there's some great stuff happening. Do I love watching theater online? No, I can't say I do. I don't like. I admire anyone who can do it. That's why we have not done real productions because I find it hard to find the emotion in a show that's online. It's not any comment about the work that has been done or the piece that's been created or any of that. I admire people who can do it, and I love the fact that there are people who can't wait to sit down and watch a play online or a musical. It in most cases doesn't work for me. So, but we are working toward some things in that realm moving forward. I think we have to. I mean, we were all thinking that we would all be up and running again in January, and clearly that's not happening. And it is feeling like things are moving along toward some sort of resolution. It won't. Who knows how long it will be before we can be back to the world we were in last March.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you have a smaller theater. How many seats are there at the York Theater?
About 175, and we can put in a few extras.
God willing that we're going to get there sooner, again, sooner rather than later.
Right.
How do you anticipate the York Theater being able to come back when you're able to start doing live theater once again in the space? Well,
when we can do live theater, I'm not worried. When the government or whoever gives us the go-ahead that it's okay to do it, we will as quickly as we can go back to some form of what we were doing. It's that in-between time where we're not even back in our space yet. The church, we rent from St. Peter's Church at the corner of 54th and Lexington, if you don't know that. And they have been wonderful, but they are not doing live services. All of their services are being streamed, and their congregation was hit pretty hard by all of this. I think they lost 60 or more people in the course of this, which is just unbelievable. And so, of course, they are taking it very carefully, and they want to make sure that we are being careful also. And so we've been talking with them about how we might affect a return and what that might involve. One of the ideas we have, and we're very excited about it, is the idea of using our space to as a video studio to record productions of one kind or another online. I mean, for streaming purposes, record them in the space with no audience, as minimal a group of people as we can to make it happen, and then stream them. And then maybe they would be the basis for a full production when we get back to doing that. So if we can build an audience for a show in a streamed version, and we find that people love it and that it really plays wonderfully, then it would be wonderful to think that it could be even better live, wouldn't it?
Well, I want to ask you a question before you came to the York Theater. It was just in existence for 5 years prior to your getting there. Am I correct?
Right.
So did they do straight plays at that time, or was it
only straight plays? Well, they had done one I think an evening of Noel Coward. I think maybe they did Red Peppers or one of those musical playlets that he did, but the emphasis was not on musical theater at all. And that was my passion. But I was happy to just be involved with a company, and a growing company that was doing good work, quality work. It was a group of actors who had worked together in regional theater who wanted to be seen in the city in shows that they had some control over.
Now, excuse me for interrupting, but was it always a professional theater company from the very beginning? I know that there are some theater groups from churches all over the city that are not considered off-Broadway or equity productions. Was it always that way?
It was. When I got involved, it was called the York Players. And being in a church, I was worried that gave it a feeling of not being professional. Not that the work was not good. The work was wonderful. But as I got to know Janet and got comfortable giving my opinion, and she getting comfortable with my giving my opinion, I said, I think the title works against you. So against what we are doing, we're a professional equity company, off Broadway we were, but still, I was worried that the word players, also the typeface they were using, just sort of screamed community theater to me. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with community theater. A couple of wonderful civic theaters, the Ocala Civic Theater for one. I've done a number of shows there and had a great time. But that isn't what we were doing. So I was worried it's all so much about perception and how people see you from the materials you put out, from the shows that you put out. And it's learning to say, oh, people are getting this from what we just printed or what we just performed. We should be careful, because then they're going to begin thinking that we are this, but actually we're this. And so I said, I think the word players works against what we're doing. So for a couple of years, she took my suggestion, and we were the York Players Company, which I thought just made it a little more, took it a little away from that. And then I kept pushing in that way of mine, and we eventually became the York Theater Company. I forget what year that was. Sorry.
Now, what was her background before she founded this theater company?
She was amazing. I'm sorry. I just had to read that. Evidently, I sent out the wrong link for our gala tonight to all the performers. So happily, someone else is dealing with it. That's why. See, I can say I'm comfortable with all.
Even in the midst of an interview, he's working.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay.
We're down to the wire.
Yes.
As I said to you earlier, I probably should not have said yes to doing this, but I didn't think about it when you asked me. I was so flattered to be asked. So anyway, Janet.
Yes.
She's an amazing person. And the more I got to know her, the more I was taken with her and felt so happy that I just ended up there. It was all because of this offhand remark from my aunt. And they happened to go to that church, incidentally.
Now, you said earlier that when you came to New York, you asked your aunt, you wanted to know of a theater to get involved with. Where does that love of theater come for you? I mean, growing up, was your family exposed to theater? Did you do theater in school? How did that all start for you?
Well, it's kind of interesting. My mom had a background in music. She studied piano at Salem College in North Carolina and taught piano, tried to teach me, and I, at the time, resisted. I've kicked myself ever since that I didn't. Is
that where you're from?
No, Florida. I'm from Florida.
Florida.
I grew up in Naples.
Okay. I know.
And my dad, I have two brothers. I'm the middle one. And our dad was very into words. He was a newspaper man. He wrote for a number of different newspapers in North Carolina and then down in Florida. And but he also just loved words, read voraciously, and could quote Shakespeare just off the top of his head. But he also loved musical theater. They went to they did it. I guess we all took a trip to New York. Maybe I was in third grade or so. We didn't get to go to any shows, but Mom and Dad went to a couple of shows, and one of them was The Music Man. Mm-hmm. And Dad loved it. He loved the wordplay, the opening scene, and he would quote that. We got the recording, and from both of them, I've got aspects of my love of all this stuff. And but our school, Mom was in a community theater production or two in Naples, mm-hmm. Naples Players, which are still in existence, very much so. So that was a couple of Gilbert and Sullivan things. I forget what else I saw. And anyway, but our school didn't have a strong drama program. I did a couple of little things here and there, but somewhere in high school, they built a new library, a new public library in Naples. And this big, for then very impressive new building, and they got a shipment of records. As I recall, there were like 4 boxes, cardboard boxes of records, and many of them were show recordings. And we had all the fairly standard show recordings at home, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lerner and Lowe, Music Man, blah, blah, blah. But in here were things I had never heard of. And really, it was that shipment of records that was probably sent to this library by some record company. Many of them were Columbia recordings, and they just said, these are overstocked, these will never sell, where can we send them? And so somehow they ended up at the Naples Public Library.
Do you remember getting the little thing in the mail that for a penny you could order the cast recordings? I got in trouble with my parents because I ordered like every cast recording, and all of a sudden they're getting billed for all of these things.
I don't think I was I had access to that. Where did you grow up?
In South Carolina.
Oh, my mom's from South Carolina.
I'm sorry?
My mom was from South Carolina.
Wow. Where was your mom?
Lawrence.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Where were you?
In Conway, South Carolina.
I don't know.
Just outside of Myrtle Beach. But anyway, Columbia used to send out these things that for a penny, and of course it was an enticement to get you on their list, and they would keep sending albums to you, and I got in trouble.
Oh, it's probably good I didn't have access to that.
But anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting. So
no, not at all. So I was fascinated, and there were things in there like Mr. President, Irving Berlin's big flop. But I knew a number of Irving Berlin things, even in high school. But I became fascinated by how could someone, a master of the form, like Irving Berlin, how could he write a show that was not successful? And I don't know how long it took for me to put this together. This was a major writer, and this show was not successful. Years later, I probably learned all of the history of how it sort of ended his career, or he thought it ended his career and all that. But I became fascinated by these shows and how could anyone take that amount of time and effort and money to make a show happen that was so clearly unsuccessful. And there was something in all of that. And I really trace a lot of this, what we do in the Mufti series, giving shows a second chance to be seen, to that shipment of records that came to our local library when I was in high school. And then finding that then back to Janet, sorry. her background, it was interesting to me. Her husband was the organist and choirmaster at Heavenly Rest, Charles Dodsley Walker. And he had started something called the Canterbury Choral Society there. At the same time, he was conducting the choir and playing the organ and blah, 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 teaching at Chapin School. And she saw the parish hall sitting there empty. Then I found out that she had a master's in music from the New England Conservatory. She had studied with Nadia Boulanger in Paris. And then she had done 7 Broadway shows. She was trained as a classical soprano. And at some point, I think she realized that making a living in that way would be very difficult unless you just happened on the perfect career. So she ended up doing a number of Broadway shows. Her first one was Plain and Fancy. She got to know Barbara Cook. Her first one was Damn Yankees, sorry. Okay. And then Plain and Fancy, she got to be very good friends with Barbara Cook, ended up doing the entire run of The Music Man. She understudied Julie Andrews in Camelot. She was in Anyone Can Whistle for its entire 2-week or 3-week run. She was in The Golden Apple that opened off Broadway and moved to Broadway. And I found out about all this. I was just amazed. I said, why aren't you doing musicals? And she said, well, they're just so difficult. And but I sort of kept pushing. And out of that, we ended up doing 1 a year, but finding that we had this same interest in giving a second chance to shows that for one reason or another weren't done. Maybe they'd have a difficult first production. Maybe they were wonderfully successful, but they were sort of considered out of date. Or maybe our first show was She Loves Me, which at the time was an artistic success on Broadway, but was not looked at as the perfect gem that it really is, and that it is looked at today. Witness the number of revivals. So we did the first revival of it in New York City. Sheldon and Jerry both came to see it, and I was terrified because it was the first time I designed a musical. And but that sort of set us off in that direction of giving a chance for shows to be seen. And She Loves Me was hardly desperately in need of our attention to bring it back to life the way many other shows.
But I want to ask you, I mean, obviously in this business, as you know, it's all about collaboration. What was it about you and Ms. Walker that came together and that she thought that you were the perfect successor to take over this theater and to keep it thriving and moving forward?
Well, I think the more we worked together, we found we became very good friends, and we would, she and Charlie and a couple of other friends, we would go, she ran the Woodstock Playhouse a couple of summers, and I designed up there, and we had some wonderful vacation time together, and she and Charlie had met in Paris. He was the organist for the American Cathedral, so they knew it very well, and at one point they proposed a trip to Paris. And I thought how wonderful to go there with people who knew it inside and out, and I didn't really have to study up or anything. So they planned the whole thing, and it was wonderful. We took a trip to London, and we went into Scotland a little bit. We did another trip to Italy together, and they were wonderful traveling companions. And we just all hit it. I was sort of the younger one of the group. And we just became very friendly. It was a very comfortable friendship. And all along, every once in a while, I'm not sure when this started, but I would say, you know, Janet, I think maybe we should consider doing only musicals. And she would pat my arm and she would say, I know, dear. I know that's what you would like, but I think we should keep doing what we're doing. So,
I mean, thank God that you were, is tenacious the right word?
I guess, or pushy, or there are any number of words that could come to mind. I think I was generally nice about it. There was a time when we didn't get along. I think I was sort of feeling, people would say to me, why are you still there? This is after I'd been there for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And like our Sweeney Todd moved to Broadway that I designed. We had a number of shows moved commercially. Pacific Overtures, Sweeney Todd. And I was sort of feeling, well, maybe I just thought there were things that could be done better.
I have a question from somebody who's watching here, and I want to jump on so that I can make sure that this question is answered. But he'd like to know how you branched off into designing. But you started.
I didn't branch off. I was trained as a designer.
No, that's what I was going to say. You were trained as a designer.
Yeah, and Janet hired me as a designer. My interest was in design. I had no interest or knowledge of running a theater. That was a sort of, and I still don't think I really know what I'm doing. And there are people who would agree with it.
Did you ever have any aspirations to being on stage?
No, happily not. In recent years, I've toyed with the idea of like doing a cabaret act. That would be fun. But and I actually was in Enter Laughing the last time we did it. There's a wonderful tiny cameo right near the end of it that's sort of pivotal to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Paulson Lee, who was Stuart Ross directed it again wonderfully. And Jennifer Paulson Lee was the choreographer. And she said, I think you should play that part. And I said, why? She said, it would just be hilariously funny. The audience would love you. And I said, yeah, but what if I'm really awful? She said, it would be even better if you're awful.
Oh my God.
And I'm not going to go into how I was or not. It was a horrible experience just because for that one, maybe 5-minute scene at the end of Act 2, it completely took over my life. Because Act 1, I would sit out in the house and watch the show. And then at intermission, I would have to go back and start getting dressed. And it wasn't that it was just, a tux. He was on his way to a formal shindig of some kind. And in the midst of it, the scene, he took off the tux and gave it to the young man who's the star of the show, David Kolowitz. Mm-hmm. And it's a pivotal scene because if he didn't loan him his tux, the show wouldn't, mm-hmm. The plot couldn't happen.
Right.
And then just for a few lines, I was terrified. And when I would miss one just a little bit, Jill Eikenberry and Michael Tucker, who were in it the first time we did it, came to see it. And I said, I have so much. I've always loved actors and respected them and never had any desire to do this. But now I have so much more respect for what they do because I can't imagine this kind of thing hanging over you all the time. And the lines go through your head and you think, what if I said that? Or did I say that last night? Or if I hadn't have turned this way last night, would it have gone better? And she said, you have no idea. And that's this tiny little scene you're talking about. When you're doing a whole show, you have no life because you're totally wrapped up in that experience all the time. So it ended up being, and also I was designing the set at the same time and painting it. So I was up till 2 or 3 in the morning painting the set at my advanced age, and then doing this thing and making. I'm fairly well known for making a speech before most of the shows that we do, mm-hmm. And so I'd go out on. The funny thing was making the speech, and we didn't announce that I was in the show. So I would make the speech, and then near the end of Act 2, I would suddenly appear on stage, and it got this big round of applause because we hadn't made a big deal. We'd kept it pretty quiet that I was in it. And so Jennifer Paulson Lee was correct that they loved me. Whether they loved my performance, I'm not going to go into.
Well, you are loved at the theater, you know that.
What?
I said you are loved at the theater. So
Oh, yeah.
But I want to go back to something you said. You said that you and Janet went through a stretch of time where you were not getting along. And of course, you were frustrated because you wanted something. She wasn't really giving you that. How long did that frustration go on, and how did you get through it?
It was, as I recall, I have to plug this in just in case this stops. As I recall, it was a short amount of time. I think it was a 3 or 4, maybe 5 month period where it was just sort of, and I remember her sitting down with me and saying, now we need to talk this through because I get the sense you're not happy. I said, it's not that I'm not happy. It's just, anyway, I think it made her see that I had maybe more to offer. I think somewhere in there, I became associate artistic director. And that was not, I don't believe that's what it was about. Maybe it was. Maybe. But anyway, somewhere in there, I was given that title, which helped. And then right in there, I don't know exactly when this was. She took me aside on one of our summer vacations and she said, over. And I was so, flattered. I didn't know what to say. And I said, really? You think that's a good idea? And she said, yes, I think you understand what we are trying to do, what I've been trying to do all these years. And she said, I have no plans of leaving right now, but I just wanted to say, if it ever happens, I would love for you to be in line for it, if you're willing. I said, I'm willing. Let's keep talking about how to do it. And then a few years later, I think it was 4 or so years later, she was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
And she was given 3 months to live. And she ended up living for 3 years, which says so much about her whole approach to life, to doing things, that she was resolute and she made things happen. One of the rectors at Heavenly Rest called her the Iron Butterfly because she could talk him into any number of things, like, I really want to do this show in the church. We had 2 spaces, the church itself, where we did certain big things like Shakespeare or occasionally a musical, or the parish hall where we did most things. And it got more and more difficult as things went on to do shows in the church, but she could sort of sweet talk him. And so something happened. I forget what the production was. And Molly Gross, who is still on our boards, a long-time member of the company, one of the founders of the company, would work with Janet, and they would sort of come in and deal with the rector as a tag team. And or one would come in and talk to him, and then the other one would come in and talk to him and get what they needed for the next production or whatever. And there became a rule that Janet could not be in the office of the rector by herself ever. Someone else had to be with her from the church. So he couldn't be talked into like giving up the church for 3 months to do a big show or something like that. It was kind of funny. Anyway, I'm not sure how I got onto that, but
well, I want to ask you, how long were you in the theater before the transition took place for you to take over as the producing artistic director? And was that an easy transition for you?
Well, no. Well, we moved to St. Peter's in 1992. And there's a kind of interesting story there. We were part of Heavenly Rest. We were an arm of Heavenly Rest. So we were under their 501c3 not-for-profit status. There were foundations that wouldn't give us money because we were technically a religious organization. So, but we didn't have to have our own functioning board of directors because we were under the churches. When we moved to St. Peter's, that had to change. We had to become our own functioning 501c3 organization. That took a while, but because we did, it just got more logistically difficult up at Heavenly Rest. There were AA meetings we had to schedule around, and the day school, which I also taught for, used the parish hall as a gymnasium. So everything I designed had to be built to fold away up on the stage so they could play basketball in there during the day, and nothing could be dangerous. There could be nothing sticking out that little kids or big kids, because they went up through 8th grade at that time, could injure themselves on. So it became more and more difficult, even though we didn't pay rent. It was an amazing situation. We had a gigantic workshop downstairs, which allowed all sorts of wonderful things to be created for next to nothing. And because we also had a lot of storage. Anyway, but it was becoming more and more difficult. Janet searched around and found that St. Peter's was coming available. Musical Theater Works had been in there for a couple of years, and they, I think, hadn't made a go of it, or couldn't continue to make a go of it. And she came back and said, St. Peter's would love for us to move in down there. So she took it to our board, which was not because of our whole situation with Heavenly Rest, was not a functioning board of directors. It was an advisory board.
Okay.
And she explained the whole thing, and she said, I think it would be very good for us to make this step and move to St. Peter's. And they voted, and they said, no, we don't think it's a good idea. And she said, well, I'm sorry, I've made the agreement anyway, and we're doing it. And if we had been under a different circumstance, the board could have kept it from happening, but they didn't have that power. And Janet, being the iron butterfly that she was, it happened. And so that was 90.
When this happened, Jim, was that before or after her diagnosis with the cancer?
That was before.
Okay.
I think she was diagnosed in 94.
Okay.
And then she died in 97. 94 was our 25th anniversary. So we had a wonderful season that year that included Merrily We Roll Along, which was another of our gigantic Sondheim hits, and it almost moved to Broadway. Long story there, but I won't go into it.
Well, I want to ask you about something, before we, run out of time, because I do want to talk about the gala tonight. There was a time on Broadway where intimate musicals happened. Like I Do. And I think because most people go to the theater now expecting a big splashy musical, you've always been able to do what you've done in a limited space, that you make it work. What's the biggest cast that you've ever had at your theater? And do you feel that when theater starts to come back, that the more intimate types of musicals will come back as well?
Well, I think there will always be an audience for intimate, literate musical theater. That's what we have espoused since I've been there. That's one of our catchphrases. It's wonderful to have a gigantic spectacle, and our space doesn't really lend itself to that. We've had shows, however, that moved. Cagney, for example, moved to the West Side Theater, and even though that actual space is a tiny bit smaller than ours, because of the height, it looks much bigger. So it was redesigning it to take advantage of that. When Desperate Measures moved to New World Stages, it also took on a whole new look because it was a much bigger space. And I think the largest cast we've had in a full production was 17 or 18, and with an orchestra of 6 or 7. Storyville, I think, was one of the most recent large ones, and that was a cast of 14 and an orchestra of 7. And that taxes everything: the number of dressing rooms we've got, the amount of backstage space we have. But it is really impressive. I mean, that space is so wonderfully adaptable that you can have a 2-person show that just blows the lid off the place if it's the right people and the right show and it's done well. And then when you get a cast as large as Storyville with 14 people marching down the aisle in a Mardi Gras parade as they did in Storyville, it's just electrifying. So I love that space, and lots of people do, because we can still do shows that are not mic'd. Sadly, more and more shows need to be mic'd because people love to have the musicians play out. A recent show, I won't go into it, there was a great disagreement between the two writers. The book writer, lyricist, the word guy, did not want it mic'd, and particularly because it was a period piece. And the composer, he said, I don't want it loud, but I just want the orchestra to not have to hold back all the time, so that we can hear the people talking over them, hear the cast talking over them. I would really like them mic'd, and it became very unpleasant between them, with one of them walking out of a meeting or two when he felt he wasn't getting his way. It ended up being worked out that it ended up being mic'd, but it was so subtle. He also didn't want to see people with Madonna mics. He said that would just be dumb in this period, in that small space, to have that thing in front of their face. So it ended up being worked out. They were mic'd. It was hidden carefully in the hair. And it was so subtle that I got many people coming up to me after the show saying, it's so wonderful to hear a show that isn't mic'd these days.
That's great.
It shows it can be mic'd.
That's great. Now I'm gonna actually take this off here for just a moment, and I'm gonna remove this banner because I am going to share with everyone the promo for tonight's big gala.
Oh.
And I want to let everyone know, because this will be going on a podcast. If you're listening to this on the podcast, there's no you're not going to see what we're seeing now.
Well, we may bring it back. There's talk of bringing it back in the next couple of weeks, in the next week or so. It may come back on New Year's Eve.
Well,
that is not absolutely.
Hold off on that for just a moment.
Okay.
So I'm going to share this with you. If you are wondering what's going on, go to my YouTube channel and you'll be able to see it there. But I'm going to share this incredible little video. And then we'll talk a little bit about tonight's gala on the other side.
Great.
How about that?
That whole thing just makes me smile.
Yes. Can people still get tickets for tonight?
They can. They can go to our website right now. It's at the bottom of the screen right there. And
now I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and I will talk about this at the very end of the show. But I'm going to give away a ticket tonight as my gift. You know, I will buy it. I'll take care of it, and I will just send a lucky person a code to be able to log on.
How wonderful! Thank you.
But I want to talk a little bit about a mutual friend of ours, and that's Ricky Kane Larimer. I think that she got involved with your theater after seeing Cagney. Is that correct?
Well, she'd been involved sooner, but that was her real jumping on the train moment. She just saw it and fell in love with it and decided. And her husband had just passed away, and she was really interested in getting into producing. And she loved the show so much, she decided that was the one where she was going to become the producer of a show. And she moved it to the West Side Theater, and it just showed that she has a knack for this kind of thing. And
she's doing phenomenally well, and it's going to go to London.
Yes, absolutely. It's an amazing show.
Now, I've been watching. I mean, there are a couple of things. I mean, thank God that you have kept us entertained with your cooking shows, and you also have this incredible Cabaret Scene. Series hosted by none other than Michael Feinstein, and I've been watching them. And oh my God, the other day watching Clea Blackhurst. As she puts it, opening for Ben Vereen, they were equal. It was just incredible. And that is also done in Ricky Kane's apartment with a piano.
Yes.
And putting it out there. It's just an incredible series. I hope that you will continue with that. Was this Ricky's idea to do this?
It was. We were talking, I don't know, late in the summer, and she said, I think a cabaret series. And I've known Michael Feinstein nicely for years, but she may be on the board of his Great American Songbook Foundation now. And she said, I'll call Michael and see if he'll host it. And initially we were talking about doing it the way so many things are done, with people filming themselves in their living room, and you have no idea what it's going to look like or sound like. And someone, maybe it was Ben Vereen, one person up front said, I'm not comfortable I don't want to film myself at home. I don't think I'll be good at it. Where else could we film it? And she said, well, you can do it in my living room. And out of that came the idea that it would all be filmed in her living room. We did it very carefully, very safely over 3 different days, and it just gave it a look. And the other difference is that we have a videographer and an audio guy, a sound guy. And people have talked so much about this being the gold standard of all the pandemic programming they've seen, because it's just so well done. And there's nothing that draws you out of it and you say, well, why did that have to happen? Or and it's not live. It's all recorded ahead of time, and then edited so that it's wonderfully smooth, and it's a wonderful escape, I think. And to be able to focus on these people just standing very simply at the piano in her living room with whoever is their music director behind them, it's turned out very well. And I agree with you. We should do it again. We will not go right into it. People were saying, you should start up again in January. That's too soon. But definitely, I think it's something we have created, all working together. Barry Kleinbort's the director. He's done a wonderful job. And but Ricky was the spark plug. And without her, it wouldn't have happened. So
now, your other big event each year is the Oscar Hammerstein Awards. Will you be going virtual with that next year, provided that we're not able to go into theater spaces again?
Well, we don't want to. We think it would suffer because it's so much about real people in an actual theater space performing. I'm not allowed to tell you who we are honoring. I know. And for a $1 million donation to the theater, I will tell someone.
Well, can you give me an exclusive when you're ready to announce it?
Sorry. Yeah, when we're announcing it, I'll be happy to give you an exclusive.
Oh, that'll be wonderful. I want you to come on my show and you'll give me the exclusive. Do I have that promise?
Yes, absolutely. I hope I don't forget.
No. But I want to start where I want to finish where we started, actually. When our theaters shut down, what did your calendar look like prior to getting the word that everything had to shut down?
Well, we had essentially 2 more full productions, one definitely ready to go into rehearsal, a wonderful show that Ricky was also responsible for. She brought it to me. It's called Cheek to Cheek, Irving Berlin in Hollywood. And it's a dance review, really, of all of his great songs from the movies that he made. that he wrote. And it's directed and conceived and choreographed, most importantly, by Randy Skinner, whom I don't believe has ever worked off Broadway before. And he was so excited about it. It was all cast, ready to go, all designed. March, it was to go up at the end of April, I think. March, we shut down. So we've just been waiting. Of course, right then we thought, well, in June we'll get it up and it'll be fine. No, not June. Then we thought, well, September, certainly. No. And then certainly it'll be January. No. So we're still trying to figure out, but we will reopen with Cheek to Cheek, because the idea of that show, after what we've all been through, it'll just be like heaven to have a whole evening of wonderful Irving Berlin songs, but not just sung, but gorgeously choreographed and gorgeously danced by a 6-member cast, 4-person band. And we had an amazing cast lined up. I hope they are all still available when we come back, because it will make such a splash, and it'll be just such perfect timing.
Well, Jim, first of all, I can't believe it, but we are at the end of our show.
You did it. Feels like we started.
I told you it's going to fly. And there's so much that I still want to ask you. So I hope you'll come back for another time.
I would love to. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
And I want to say thank you so much for all that you do at the York Theater. It truly is one of my favorite theaters in New York. I love the Mufti series. I love going to the Oscar Hammerstein awards every year. You do so much great work.
You've been a part of them a couple of different times.
Thank you. And I really want to thank you for all of that. I want to thank everybody for being here today. If you enjoyed the show and you go to my website, richardskipper.com, and you sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show, you will automatically be entered into a drawing for a ticket for tonight's gala. But it has to be done by 6:30 so that I can get the code and get it to you. Again, richardskipper.com. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. It is the holiday season. If you're able to make a contribution to the theater tonight, the York Theater, by all means, do so. And also go to your Facebook friends list, and the third name that pops up, give them a free pass to see the show tonight. They'll thank you. It's a great holiday gift. And trust me, if it's any indication from what I've seen so far with this series, you're all in for a treat. Some of my favorite people are going to be there. Enjoy it. And Jim, I always want to give our guests the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we talked about that you want to expound upon, anything we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everybody at this time. And again, thank you for doing this, and thank you for all you do.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. I would say let's just all stick together. We will get through this. We have to get through this, because where will we be if we don't? Mm-hmm. And there's much to be thankful for. I think everyone can find one thing to be thankful for every day that happened that makes you feel better. So let's everyone look for that particular thing that happened to us that day, and that will help us get through.
Thank you so much. And I'm thankful for you.
Oh, thanks, Richard.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Back at you.